Welcome to South Carolina in early winter. Today we'll swap the driver's side axle with its integral CV joints, constant velocity joints, in this vehicle. It's a 1981 VW pickup. Some people call them Caddies. This one has a manual 5-speed transmission. I bought this APW drive shaft for about $100. It came complete with the CV joint grease, the inner joint. Here's the axle and the protective layer. Plastic came in the box. As a side order, I got an axle nut, which I may not have needed because this has one on it. But this axle nut that I got has got a lock ring on it, which is a nice feature. And then I also bought 6 of the 8mm 12-point spline bolts that are needed to mount that end of the drive shaft up to the transaxle. First, we're going to loosen this axle nut, and then we're going to loosen the lug bolts. We're going to loosen the axle nut with this 30mm wrench. This vehicle has a sway bar, and what I did is I just undid the nuts holding the hasp on that holds the sway bar down on the control arm, so it would loosen it up. Also over here there's a ball joint that goes up in the bottom of the hub. I did the set bolt. It's like a 1/2 inch or 13mm bolt that goes through. I just drove that bolt out, so now the swing arm, the control arm, is loose, and the suspension is a little bit loose. You can see the axle move. Supposedly that's enough to get the axle out after we loosen it on both ends. The thing we're going to do next is we're going to get off the main nut here on the axle. King nut. Here's the axle nut. Just got it off. Let's see if we can pull the axle out of the hub. No, but it's definitely loose. It's got a washer in there we need to get out too. Well, we're at the point where we're going to take the 12-point 8mm bolts out of the back side of the drive shaft up against the transaxle. They're located, let's see if we've got enough light to do this. They're located, 6 of them, right around the shaft like that. Let's get a little more light in there. You can see the bolt to the left of my finger. Here it is, to the left of my finger. Let's see if we can get our tool, which looks like this, get it in there with a braking bar. Here we go. And answer is yes. We can get it to. You can see here the 8mm bolts with the 12-point spline heads with their 1/3 of a circle clips that go between each bolt. I'll get up closer so you can see the way the bolts look. One thing that's interesting about the bolts is that others have used things like Allen wrenches to take them on and off with, and they're in pretty rough shape. What I had to do is I had to tap the back of the shaft to drive the 12-point spline into the bolts, so they'd get enough purchase on the bolts to back them out. But they came right out. Here you can see the drive shaft coming off the back side of the wheel hub, and getting up close you can see where those 6 bolts, let me quit moving around here, where the 6 bolts came off, and it's quite loose. You can see how loose that is. What I'm going to do next is use both hands to get it out, and you won't actually see me remove the drive shaft, but hopefully it won't be a big deal and there won't be any magic to it. Well, there it is out. No magic at all. It just slid right out after we had loosened it up and given it all those degrees of freedom that it needed. The only thing that happened that was sort of spontaneous was that with my gloved hand, the inner CV joint up next to the transaxle, when I reached up there to grab the shaft to pull it out, I got grease on my glove, but that's no big deal. Came right out. Well, as near as I can tell, they're exact same part. The number of teeth are the same, the threads are the same. At least both of them will use the king nut that came with the new one, or the axle nut. And then the length is about the same. It telescopes in here, so the length is somewhat relative. Same number of holes, same size holes on each of them. Each of them have 6 bearings inside of the this end of the axle where the CV joint is located. I think they're the same. Here's the spot that the axle will connect to when we put it back on. I just went to the effort to wipe out all the old grease that was inside there. The next thing I'm going to do is load the new grease in the new axle before I put it back on here. Well, here's the axle in place. The axle nut torque it up to 170 foot-pounds according to information I got on the internet. I use the axle nut that I purchased extra that had the locking ring on it. The individual bolts on the transaxle itself coming off the axle with the 12-point spline heads, those bolts were torqued in 2 stages. The first stage was to get them up, say, around 7.5 foot-pounds, and then go diagonally across, kind of like you tighten up a tire on a rim, and then step it up to, I think it's 29.5 foot-pounds. My torque wrench is not all that accurate, and what I did was got it up around 30 is what I did. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to button it up. I've got all of the other bolts tightened up already, and my intent is to test drive it next. Thank you for watching.